Today we're talking about judges and whether their political views influence their decisions. I'm Jan Crawford Greenberg, and this is Politics Live. Welcome to Politics Live. Today we're talking about judges and politics. Joining us now is Lisa Ellman, who wrote a book with one of the University of Chicago law professors, Cass Sunstein. The book asks the question, are judges political? Lisa, welcome.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's just start right off. Tell us, are they or judges political?
Yes, Jan, judges are political, but the story is complicated and more complicated than it might appear. We wrote this book to try to inject some facts into the debate, the spirited debate that's been happening over the last several years that we hear in judicial nomination battles between the president and Congress. We're led to believe that judges are of one or two different stripes. They're either strict constructionists who follow the law, kind of like a machine, or...
And those are typically considered conservative judges, right?
Those would typically be considered possibly conservative judges, depending on which law they're choosing to follow, yes. And then on the other side of the spectrum would be activist judges, legislating from the bench. More political judges, you could say. And the idea is that this is all rhetoric and not necessarily based in any kind of reality. So our question was, are judges political? What do judges really do? Do Republicans and Democrats differ? And we studied more than 6,000 cases, almost 20,000 votes on the federal courts of appeals. And we found that, yes, in a large run of cases, we looked at very ideologically charged case types: sex discrimination, race discrimination, environmental protection, abortion, capital punishment, issues that the American people feel very strongly about and our politicians feel very strongly about. And we found that in many of these case areas, judges are political. Republicans and Democrats do vote differently.
And so what does that mean? You've got a judge who's been appointed by a Republican president. Mm-hmm. That means that he or she's going to take the more conservative path. Maybe in a sex discrimination case, they'd
Yes.
be more likely to side with the employer?
Exactly. Exactly. So in a sex discrimination case, a vote for the plaintiff, for the sex discrimination plaintiff, would have been coded as a liberal vote. A vote for the employer would have been coded as a conservative vote.
Now, you looked at the most contentious cases that divide these judges, I mean, just really controversial issues, and it seems striking to me that there was a surprising amount of agreement too, though. I mean, did that surprise you?
That did surprise us. We were actually fascinated by this. And in some areas of the law, such as criminal appeals, takings cases, Commerce Clause challenges, areas of the law in which you would think that we might find some differences between how Republicans and Democrats actually vote, we found no ideological voting. We found no differences between how Democrats and Republicans vote. We were very surprised by that.
So you had a couple of different areas where there weren't any differences. What about some of the really highly charged areas like abortion and some of those very contentious issues that divide society? I mean, how do those divide the judges?
Homosexual rights was the case area in which we found the most difference between Republicans and Democrats in terms of how they vote. Affirmative action was a very contentious issue. Discrimination, environmental protection, abortion, capital punishment, all of these cases divided Republicans and Democrats in terms of how they voted in the cases.
And how stark was it? You know, if you're just kind of watching and you're thinking about the president's going to nominate someone who's from his party, that judge is going to vote conservative every time, or that judge is going to vote liberal every time if the president's a Democrat. How dramatic were these divisions between Republican and Democratic appointees?
They were dramatic in a few cases, but over the large run of cases, they actually weren't too dramatic. And that is something that's striking about the study, is that overall, in all of these ideologically charged, quite polarizing case areas, we found a difference of only 12% in terms of how Republicans vote and Democrats vote. So Republicans actually vote in a liberal fashion 40% of the time, and Democrats vote in a conservative fashion 48% of the time.
So what does that say to you, though? Because if we're saying that judges are political, yes. But you're looking at these very controversial cases, and there's not a huge disagreement between Republicans and Democratic appointees on these contentious issues. I mean, what do you take from that?
I think we take from that, it's a tribute to the rule of law and a tribute to binding law in our system. Many of the times, Republicans will vote in a liberal fashion, and many of the times, Democrats will vote in a conservative fashion, and that's because the law binds them. In areas where the law is unclear, that's when we'll find the divisions that you would probably expect in terms of Democrat versus Republican.
So if they're being asked to look at some kind of obscure statute that Congress has passed, or they're being asked to interpret some provision of the Constitution that's a little murky, that's where you see the bigger divisions.
Exactly.
And how does that